Good morning, everybody. Just let me know that you can see me and hear me okay. Unfortunately, Slack is not working on my laptop, so I'll be gazing down at my phone occasionally to make sure that I can keep up with the conversation. Okay, so yeah. Okay, I thought someone would pay for Nikolai. I just couldn't remember who it was. So today is probably going to be a little bit of a long day. We might run over our schedule. We're already running late, right? I mean, we're already starting 30 minutes late. And the important thing to me is that you guys all leave here today with a good understanding of these two rituals, right? So this is going to be the order of the day. This is going to be how we progress. We're going to begin by the first half of the day, or the first 2 hours, is going to be about the Pentaspendia. So this morning, the morning session will be about the Pentaspendia. And then in the afternoon, it's going to be about the fire ritual. And we'll take an hour break in between. And there'll be a different link that you'll use when we come back from a lunch break that I'll share on the Slack chat. Pablo, do me a favor and go ahead and press the record on the camera there. So one of the things I wanted to mention about how we're doing this is we're live streaming it, but we're also filming it. Okay, and what I'm hoping to do is everybody who paid for this class will get access within the next week or two. Depends how long it takes for us to edit it. Everybody who signed up for this class will have access to a very nicely edited version of these lectures and of the instructional videos going over exactly how to perform these rituals. And we're using a high-def camera for it, so it'll be very high-quality video. And I'm using a high-def lapel mic as well, which is being recorded there. So that's my hope, is that we're doing the live stream here with you guys today, but in a week or so, God willing, you guys will have access to an actual very high definition, well-edited video with good audio and just well put together for your reference, so that it's a little easier to watch. Because sometimes the live streams, there's a lot of breaks here and there. There's a lot of random moments where I'm trying to correct something, or I'm talking to somebody off screen. And so hopefully the video will come as kind of like a nice little movie for you guys to be able to watch at your ease, to re-listen to the lectures well, and to rewatch the rituals being done by me for your instructional purpose, and also just as a thank you for signing up for this workshop. I would leave one of those closed there, Pablo, because otherwise, if one of those roll out onto the carpet, we're going to be in trouble. See things like this. We'll edit things like this out in the video. So this morning we're going to talk about the Pentaspendia, right? And this means the five offerings, the 5 essences. We often call it the 5 nectars. In Sanskrit literature, it's called the Panchamrit, is something similar, and ours is not identical to the Panchamrit. It's a little bit different, but the concept is essentially the same. And the concept behind this, right? This is a rite of therapeia, right? And both the things you're learning today, they are rites of worship. They are not magical rites. Okay, so the fire ritual that you guys are learning today is not a fire ritual necessarily to manipulate things around you. It's a fire ritual of worship, right, and of purification. And the Pentaspendia you're learning today is a Pentaspendia of worship. It's a Pentaspendia of offerings. Now, let it be understood, and we have to understand the philosophy. Let it be understood that What we are not doing in either of these situations, we're not worshiping rocks, or we're not worshiping fire. Okay? To say that the Pentaspendia is idol worship, or to say that the fire ritual is worshiping a fire, is an uneducated understanding of these matters. The fire represents that within the world which is the most like the gods. Fire is trapped sunlight. Right? Fire is directly connected to the sun. And without the sun, none of us can live. And without the sun, we don't even have the solar system. So fire is seen as this beautiful and incredibly pure. I mean, it's very difficult even for scientists still to properly define fire. Because what is it? It's a strange kind of substance. It's completely uniform to itself. And it is the most subtle and penetrating thing that we have in this physical world. And it emits light, and it's like the sun, and it's the most like the bodies of the angels. It's the most like the bodies of the gods in terms of material things. So we have to understand that magic is a language of symbols. One of the most important teachings that the Egyptians could have left behind in the form of their hieroglyphs is that magic is symbols, right? Religion is about symbolism. Spirituality is about symbolism, because symbolism is profound. Symbolism is what an idea is. Okay? We can take a word like justice, and if we take this concept, we can only try to describe it with symbols. Even when we define it, we can only use imagery to define it. Symbols of this profound power. The Greek term for something like the Orphic egg is an agomata, which, if you have a good ear for it, you understand sounds a little bit like amalgam, and that's more or less what the word means. It's an agomata is a divinely animated statue, right? Animated here meaning that it has animal to it. It has life, anima, right? Soul. That's where actually the word animal comes from. The word animal means something that has soul. Right? It has anima, soul. That's why sometimes in old translations you see the word soul talked about as the world animal, right? And it just means the living thing, the soul. And so there's a soul essence, a psychic essence that fills the ritual tools that we're working with and fills the imagery that we're using. And what happens is the Orphic egg is the basis of the Pentaspendia. Right? Now you can do a Pentaspendia on many different things. In fact, in many traditions, you can even do a Pentaspendia on masters. You can do a Pentaspendia on the living body of a master, right, while he's in meditation. But and I'd rather you guys not pour olive oil and milk all over me. It's gonna be hard to get out of my hair. But this is part of the tradition. It's how we're taking things that are seen as precious, right, and we're offering them. Now, when we think of precious, many of these things are not rare commodities in today's world. But to the ancient world, to have enough olive oil to waste, to waste in the sense of like you're not using it cooking, right? To have enough olive oil to use for worship, which you use quite a bit for worship, was a nicety that not everybody had. It was a little bit of a sacrifice. I mean, like if you were a villager and you were going to offer all that olive oil, that put a dent in you. Financially, that was a pretty good sacrifice. Milk, right, is a substance that is readily available, but not necessarily in very large quantities. And each of these have kind of a different symbolism, right? The oil, right? The oil of the olive tree represents this kind of it's like your blood, and it represents kind of the vaporous part of life. It has a quality of a fire, right? Oil contains a fire within inside of it, and it makes things more flammable, right? And we light the lamp with oil. So oil represents like the sustenance. It represents our energy, our pneuma, that kindles the fire of our spiritual practices. that kindles the fire of wisdom. And if there's not enough oil in you, right, like some of the old masters even still say, right, that you know, you need enough oil for the light to you know, for the flame to glow brightly. That you may have a student who has plenty of wick and no oil, right? Plenty of potential, but no juice, right? They need to actually do the work. They need to have the energy. They need to cultivate. So oil represents this kind of sustaining power and energy. Milk represents motherhood, right? Milk represents nourishment. It represents sustenance and growth. It represents motherhood, right? And motherhood represents protection, nourishment, generation. And then we'll use, you know, water, because water is the basis of life, right? Water is the basis of life. Without it, you're not alive. And so it's important, even the water illustrations that we perform before we do rituals and before we do prayers, to begin our practice with water is kind of an important symbolism, because it's acknowledging the importance of water. It's acknowledging that life depends on water. And so our spiritual path is also intimately connected to water. Water is the lifeblood of this planet. And then we use honey, because honey, in the Pentaspendia, honey is the closest physical thing to the ambrosia of the gods, the nectar of immortality. And even on our physical bodies, it has some amazing qualities for our health. So nectar is this incredible, you know, honey is this incredible nectar that's produced by bees. And bees are the animal of Apollo. They're the sacred animal of Apollo, who's the god of immortality and health. And then we'll usually use a fragrant water, right? Oftentimes rose water. Partly because the rose is sacred to Athena and it represents wisdom. But it's also, you know, represents, again, kind of a sacrifice. Like you would normally put expensive fragrances into the water, right? Whatever for you was considered to be a little pricey, right? If you're very well-to-do, that may mean that you're putting, you know, sandalwood extracts in there, because I mean, sandalwood can be $150 an ounce. But if you're not so well-to-do, it can mean that you're just offering some frankincense oil, right? Or something, a sort of a little bit of rose water mixed in it. But it's a fragrant thing. Represents the mind, represents the angels, the daimons, the spirits really enjoy, you know, the fragrance. So now we need to ask ourselves an important question before we embark on the rituals for today. And that is, what are we offering exactly, and to who are we offering it? Because all the Platonists and great philosophers are uniform on one important point. God can't drink your milk, right? And you're not pouring olive oil in God's hair. God's not that kind of thing. Apollonius made a powerful statement when he told one of the Roman emperors. He said, God doesn't need your offerings. But he meant this in the sense that God doesn't need you to go to the temple and offer a bunch of stuff, right? Because that stuff is corporeal, and God is the exact opposite of corporeality. So the question arises, well, what are we offering? Well, we're offering things on multiple different levels, because the energies of the gods operate on an ideal level. They operate on a level of symbolism. They operate on a level of intention. They operate they operate within intellect. You have to think of the gods as being intellects. They are pure intellects. And you have an intellect as well. And because you have an intellect, you can give an intellectual power to everything you do. There can be a reason why you wash your right hand first instead of your left. There can be a reason as to what you eat and don't eat. There can be a reason as to how you enter a house and how you leave a house. Okay? You can give intellectual reasons to every single thing you do. And in fact, as a philosopher, this is actually encouraged to do, right? Down to even the simplest of things. So, because in doing so, see, the gods are pure reason. And so the more we fill our lives with reasonings, the more divine our lives can become. Because we humans have this intermediary power. Iamblichus stresses the mediary role of the human soul. This separates Iamblichus from Plotinus. Both of them, may God bless both their souls and exalt them. And they're both divine masters. And I pray, literally, that their teachings are exalted in this world and the next every day, and continue to be so throughout history and throughout the future. But what you have to understand is they have some different views on some matters. And to Plotinus, the soul itself can go all the way up to the one. To Iamblichus, this is, kind of a silly idea. And I tend to side with Iamblichus on the matter, mainly because it creates a lot of importance for the soul. Because if the soul is just another god, then there's no reason for the soul to be a soul. It should just be a god, right? There's no reason for us to have a different mode of life. And you get stuck on this essential theological question. Thank you for the coffee. You get stuck on this essential theological question. Why did we ever incarnate in the first place? Right? If we're so inherently divine, if we're so completely the one, as Plotinus often, contends, then why do we ever descend in the first place? Iamblichus says that that's not an issue for Iamblichus, and it's not an issue, in my opinion, for any theurgist, because the soul, like everything else in this cosmos, has a reason for it. And its reason isn't selfish. Nothing in this entire cosmos came to be just for itself. So, soul likewise did not come to be just for itself. Soul came to be, soul came to be with reason. And one of these reasons, Iamblichus tells us, is that the soul is a bridge. The soul is a bridge between the perfectly incorporeal reality of divinity and of the divine realities, and then this world of constant change and transmutation and generation. And the soul is like both things. It can change, but it's eternal. And this puts it as a middle point, right? Because the gods are changeless and eternal. And this world is always changing and is temporal. And so soul can change and move like this world, and exist within dimension like this world, but is eternal like the gods, and incorporeal like the gods. So soul is this middle bridge here. And one of the important things that the soul does is, because the soul has intellect, the soul can apply intellect to matter. The soul can apply intellect to things in the world, to worldly activities. Now, our activities happen on some different levels. And you need to understand this, because these are important teachings for all ritual, not just for Pentaspendia's 5 rituals. These are important teachings for all ritual. What happened there? You'll have to understand it in 1 second after we check and try to figure out why the camera just stopped.
Also, you might want to move the microphone onto the rope, because it's probably being muffled when the rope.
Yeah, I covered it there a little bit. Technical difficulties for a minute, guys. Check this. Is this on? Oh, do we have 2 heaters plugged into there? Yes. Oh, the circuit blew. Definitely. Yeah, Pablo, go downstairs and find the breaker.
Do you know where this is? In the basement?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an unfinished part of the basement. Sorry, guys. It's an unfinished part of the basement, and it's all the way on the far side by the alchemy lab. Okay. And there'll be a list describing where everything is. Hopefully, when you open it up, you'll actually see that the breaker is flipped. And you can just flip it back. Sorry, guys. Because we have so many floor heaters going because it's so cold in here, we've been having a tendency to break the circuits. So we're going to take a minute. while we wait for that to get fixed, because we don't want you guys to have to miss. I don't want these teachings to be missed out on the film here. Good morning, Foxy. I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well too. And yeah, James, if you miss some, that's fine. I mean, the whole thing's being recorded. You can even use the YouTube links, you know, that are there to see it. And then hopefully within a week or so, we'll have a nice high quality video made for you guys. Did everybody make sure to download the instruction manual, like the manual that I uploaded on the PDF? Yeah, I mean, this is working fine. It's just the video camera, since that's plugged in over there, it broke. So I was just about to give kind of a important teaching, so I want to make sure to catch it on the camera. So as James very cleverly said, we're taking a circuit break.
A circuit break. How's the coffee?
Coffee's great. It's very good, actually. What'd you do to it? Stuff. Yeah, the PDF's way at the top, guys. All the way at the top of the channel. And it's also pinned. So if you just click on the pinned thing in the channel, there's a little section you can pick to see anything that's been pinned. And that has the PDF on it. You need the PDF, okay? Because the PDF, I'm going to be using the PDF today to demonstrate the rituals, right? Like, I'm going to be sitting there with the PDF and going over each step and doing it exactly as I wrote it down on the PDF, so that you guys have the video to watch and you have the PDF to use as a guide and reference. In the meantime, you guys can watch me drink my coffee. There it goes.
So that's just going to be 2 separate videos.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go again. Thank you all for your patience. So, where was I? I was talking about the different kinds of activities that we do. Oh, what just happened there? Sorry, guys, Pablo's out of control. Okay. So the different kinds of activity, right, that we perform, that the soul itself does, we act on many different levels. And to begin with, yeah, Shane, of course you're going to be confused about things in the PDF, because that's why we're doing the video, you know, so that you can look at the PDF, and then as you see it done, then you'll understand. But then, yeah, of course, there'll be time to ask questions. So yeah, so there's many different kinds of activities that occur, that we perform as a soul. And we have to understand this, because we have intellect that we apply to our activities, okay? And so we have the activity itself, and then we have the reason for the activity, which can change. And that reason is part of the intellect to it. It's part of the intent. And intent is the basis of action. And I need all of you to understand this, especially for the sake of ritual. Intent is the basis of action, okay? And in ritual, it is what defines your activities. So if you're performing your Pentaspendia with the intent of worshiping a rock, you are worshiping a rock, okay? If you're performing your fire ritual with the intent of worshiping a fire, you are worshiping a fire. Yeah, the fire's really going over there. So intent is everything. Now, if you're doing the Pentaspendia as a way to offer energies to the divine and to offer intent and ideas and reasonings to the divine, feelings to the divine, actions to the divine. Actions are interesting things because we have, say, for example, the simple activity of me drinking my coffee here, right? And on one level, it's just a simple physical thing, right? And it's the hand is doing one thing, the fingers are doing another thing, the mouth is doing another thing, the gullet is doing another thing, then the stomach does another thing. And these are all separate activities that don't have to be tied together by anything. But then the mind can look at all these separate things and put them together and take a dozen different actions and say, oh, I'm drinking coffee. There's an important thing that's happening there, right? Because I'm not saying, you know, this body is grabbing this, you know, cup and lifting it up to its lips and then taking a sip of it and swallowing it and digesting it. I can take all these different things and activities. I can give ownership to them. I am doing these things, right? And I can sum them all up with a simple statement. Well, this is one of the powers that the mind has. And then now I can drink coffee on top of that. So the mind has already given power to this activity, right? The mind has already taken a dozen different activities and given them one shape. And I'm saying, I'm drinking coffee. Well, now, on top of this, there's many other things I can add to this. I'm drinking good coffee. Well, just by saying I'm drinking good coffee, I've added a whole spectrum of emphasis to this. And then if I say I'm drinking good coffee because I'm tired, it's different than I'm drinking good coffee because I like coffee. And I prefer good coffee to bad coffee. And therefore, I'm drinking good coffee because I like coffee, right? And that's different than I'm drinking coffee because I'm having coffee withdrawals and I have a headache and I'm taking a little bit of coffee to help reduce the headache, right? There's different reasons we can do the same activity. So think of all the different levels that the intellect is applying to this action. This is important. Some of you guys are always wondering, you know, why do we study philosophy? Why should we care about grammar? Why should we care about logic? Why should we care about rhetoric? These are important things, right? You have to understand. Another word for some of the old philosophers was a grammarian, right? Because philosophy and grammar are intimately tied together. Because grammar is how we take a completely abstract and corporeal idea and we define it, we give it a form in formlessness, because words are formless. Language is a formless thing. It's incredible, right? And so we have all these different levels of activity that are happening. And there's an image of this happening as well. Because aside from me saying I'm drinking coffee, right, and this being the activity I'm doing, there's a whole other spectrum, which is the fact that I'm saying I'm drinking coffee. And that if you didn't have a picture of me in front of you, but you could still hear my voice and I said I'm drinking coffee, you would all know what I was doing. Well, this is a profound thing. And if I said I'm drinking good coffee, you would have even more ideas about it. Right? And if I said, oh, I'm drinking good coffee and it's making me really happy, now you have even more ideas. You may even be able to guess that I'm smiling or like I look nice and content while I'm drinking my coffee, even though you can't see me. Now, this is the power of language, right? So now we have 3 different levels of activity. We have 1, the physical activity, okay? Pablo, you got to get a handle of yourself. Pablo has turned into an elephant in the last 10 minutes and has just knocked over everything he comes within proximity of. So we have now here at least 3 basic activities, and these have been acknowledged by the ancients. We have the physical activity, right? Which is the physical thing that is occurring when I'm drinking coffee. And all the many dozens of physical things that have to happen for me to drink coffee. And then we have the word image, right? Which is how I can convey to others I'm drinking coffee. So we have an image, a symbol being created. It's being strung together by sounds that all of us agree on the meanings of these sounds when they're strung together. That is why we all speak one language. We're using a symbolism called English, a sound symbolism called English right now, right? And you can hear it. It's a symbolism of the ears instead of with the eyes. and it's agreed upon. We all have the same ideas of it. And so there's a sound symbol. Now, this is an important thing. This sound symbol is an agomata. This sound symbol is an image of something. It represents something, and it represents it so well, it even kind of carries the energy with it. I can say I'm drinking coffee, and you guys can actually connect with what I'm doing. It brings something to mind. And then there's the intellectual level of it, the part that allows me to string together all these different physical activities and biological processes into one simple statement: I'm drinking coffee. Right? And then on top of that, the basis of all of it is the intent. Why am I drinking coffee? With what purpose am I drinking coffee? Because everything we do has some kind of intent behind it. So with any activity, all these things play a role. Yes, of course, with the Pentaspendia, physically, right? Physically, we're pouring things on a rock, right? If we just look at it on a simple physical level, we're pouring things on a rock. But if I say I'm drinking coffee, and I'm drinking good coffee, and that's all that you know, and that's all that you can hear, is that I'm telling you I'm drinking coffee. Well, what's the most important thing about that statement? Is it the feeling and relation and idea of drinking coffee? Or do you think of 100 different biological processes when I say I'm drinking coffee? No, you think of the idea. There's an idea I'm conveying that's on a whole different level and far more important. Because when I'm telling you I'm drinking coffee, am I telling you it because I want you to know that I'm physically grabbing a cup and bringing it to my lips and sipping it in my mouth and then swallowing it down my gullet and it's going into my stomach? Is that what I'm trying to convey? No, I'm trying to convey I'm having a better time than you if you're not drinking coffee. Right? I'm trying to convey meaning. I'm conveying reasoning and meaning that far transcends just the physical activity. So if I'm pouring water on a rock, is that the most important thing about that activity? No. Just like the most important thing about me saying I'm drinking coffee isn't the biological processes and activities and motions involved. It's the reasoning, it's the intent, it's the idea, it's the symbolisms of our motion, of our thought, of our words, right? These are what give the activity its meaning and its purpose. And this is important because this is the difference between idol worship and theurgy. Theurgists are not idol worshippers. Theurgists are not, and I've said this before, theurgists are not strict polytheists, right? They weren't. Theurgists adhere completely to the concept of total unity in God, total unity of divine intellect. So that's the important thing. That's what we adhere to. And because we understand as Platonists that the gods are intellects, they're divine intellectual realities, then intellect is how we connect to them. So yes, there's a physical thing happening. We're pouring water and different nectars on an egg, right? Or on a symbol of an egg. Now even there we begin to have some symbolism now, right? If I just move from I'm pouring water on a rock to just a simple shift, I'm pouring water on an egg. Even though I know it's a rock and I'm calling it an egg. What have I done now? I've implied there's something inside of this stone. There's some kind of aspect to it. It's symbolic of something other, because I'm not saying it's a rock, I'm saying it's an egg. What is an egg? Well, it's something that gives birth to something. It's something that contains a universe inside of it, a whole life inside of it. And that life becomes a million different things. But it starts out as that one simple thing, just the egg. And that egg is totally uniform to itself. Once it leaves the egg, leaves the egg, it becomes 1,000 different things. But within the egg, it's just one. And so even now, just if I just say I'm pouring water on an egg, now I've already, even though it's a stone, I've already begun to add symbolism. I've already begun to add meaning to it, right? If I say I'm pouring water on it, that's different than if I say I'm offering water to it. This is where symbolism starts to become very important, right? This is where our intent becomes important. So we have these different activities. Right? We have the energy of mind, and the energy of mind is woven into every single thing we're doing in an act of worship. So, of course, there's a physical basis to the activity, as there is with many activities. And one of the reasons why the theurgists used a physical basis for their activities, and why they use very dense things like stones and water, as opposed to just offering prostrations and prayers, right? Because they did that too. They offered prostrations and prayers, but that's something that is at a little bit of a higher level, right? Everything that's involved in that has life. Your body has life to it. Your intent has life to it. So it's operating on a little bit of a higher level. When you're doing something like a Pentaspendia, you're reaching down to the depths of matter, using rocks and water and things that are seen as being lifeless things. The reason why this is important as a theurgist is because this is the soul extending its providence, extending its divine reasonings and intellect all the way down to the end of creation, right? According to Platonists, all the great Platonists are of single agreement that matter itself, pure matter, devoid of life, is the lowest, it's the furthest away from the good. It is the thing that most needs to be brought to the good. And the Ablachists and the great theurgists staunchly believe that it's the soul's job to weave goodness through intellect and reasoning into matter. And this gives energy to matter, it gives purpose to matter, it gives life to matter. It makes everything in the universe work for a reason. And when and this is why we have a physical basis for the offerings and theurgic rites, because this is part of the soul extending its providence all the way down, even to lifeless things, and giving it a reason, giving it a purpose, and applying energy to it. So, and then there's the offerings are happening on different levels. The physical offering is happening, and what's benefiting from the physical offering and from the intent of the offering and the mantras and the smells, the nice fragrances, the ritual, most of this is benefiting the spirits. Most of this is benefiting spirits and angels, things that are more corporeal, they're denser, they're not perfectly eternal and corporeal deities. They're not pure realities, right? The realities, I like the word realities for the Platonic ideal forms, you know, for the Platonic deities. I mean, this is really how we have to understand them, because we can't help a lot of times but think, if we use the word gods, we think gods in the sense of like Hindu deities or Tibetan deities, something of this sort. And that's absolutely not how Plato meant. That's not at all what he meant when he talked about gods. The word reality is a closer thing, these different realities that are perfectly pure and completely themselves, right? The reality of beauty, the reality of wisdom, the reality of justice, that are the fountains from which everything else experiences these. So because the gods, these realities, are pure intellects, how do we connect to them? Through intellect. We connect to them with reasoning. We connect with them with intellections. And so the offering that they are receiving is in our intent. It's in our thought process. It's in the meaning behind our activities. That's what they're receiving. They're receiving love, right? Because any offering has to be done with love. And that's what the deities are receiving. Everything else gets stripped away by the different planetary spirits and angels and choirs as it rises, right? You make your offering, and the energy of that offering begins ascending a ladder to the heavens. And on each ladder, the things that are most like those offerings take the offering. Right? The denser offerings are taken by the lower spirits, by the nature spirits, the elemental spirits, right? Then what's left are the purer things, like the fragrances, right? And the flames, the fire. That goes up, and the angels take those, because angels are the most like fire. Their bodies are made out of a different kind of fire. And then once that's gone, what's left? Right? The fire's been taken, the fragrance has been taken, the water's been taken, the oil's been taken. What's left? Your intent, your reasonings, your love. That's what's left. Well, that is totally incorporeal. That can't be taken by anything except for the gods, because the gods are the most like it. That's their reality, right? And so that's the offering they receive. They receive your intent. They receive your purpose and your meaning. And that's why that is the essence of ritual. I mean, that is the essence of ritual. Is yes, we're going to please the whole hierarchy of spirits, because we love them too. And we want them to benefit. We want them to be in harmony with us. And we want us to be in harmony with the world, so that we can be a bridge of harmony between the unseen world and the seen world. And we want them to work with us, not against us. And they will work against you. But they will definitely work with you as well. So understand that intent is the basis. Intent and knowledge. Because you can't have proper intent without proper knowledge. Right? You can't have an intent to do something when you don't know that that intent applies to that. So for example, if I didn't know that coffee has caffeine in it, I couldn't drink coffee with the intent of waking up. Right? Now, once I knew that it had caffeine in it, I can drink it with the intent of waking it up, of waking myself up. Likewise with your rituals. That's why I'm trying to explain to you the importance of your ideas, your meanings, your love and devotion in the ritual. Because now you can perform the offerings with that intent. Now you know that. And so you can perform the offerings with the intent and with the proper understanding. That's why knowledge is power. In magic and all ritual and theurgy, knowledge is a tangible power. The more you know something, the more influence you have. Because knowledge is what the gods are made of. That's their essence, is knowledge. Which means that since everything comes from them, everything comes from knowledge. So you have to make sure you check where your heart is. Now, there's different ways to view the Orphic egg. You can view the Orphic egg as something akin to what the Hindus have as a Shivlingam, meaning you can see it as this kind of, power of this image of the power of God, this image of the power within the universe. Or you can see it as a womb that contains within it the energies of every potential energy, every potential reality. Now what will happen is different spirits will take up residence in the Orphic egg. According to the level of vibration you create in your rituals, there may be 100 different spirits living inside the Orphic egg that are benefiting from the vibrations, right? And every time you benefit them, they benefit you, right? If you're helping them, they're helping you. And so it can bring a lot of blessings into a household, right? To be able to do this. And you'll see, if you look at the PDF, when I talk about the Pentaspendia, I've given some additional offerings too. And these additional offerings are to help kind of materialize some of the energies that descend upon the egg during the process. Well, we're enclothing it with sense faculties, right? We're making offerings that satisfy the sense of touch, like clothing, making offerings that satisfy the sense of smell, like incense, making offerings that satisfy the sense of sight, like flowers and sacred images. So that you give the energy inside the Orphic egg senses, right? You stimulate the sense faculties, and then gradually the Orphic egg becomes quite a potent power. But understand that at no point in time will a god ever be in your Orphic egg, right? Gods can't do that, right? And at no point in time is God ever going to take a sip of your water, right? That's beyond. That's applying anthropomorphism to it. Now, what may happen if you're using a particular image of a deity from a polytheistic religion, such as Hinduism or some of the Tibetan deities, what may happen is that the spirits and angels that attend to these divine realities symbolically look like how those realities are portrayed, right? So Apollo himself is formless, but the angels that attend to Apollo look like the way Apollo is described in the traditional myths. And they will even call themselves Apollo because all their names are the same as the reality that they serve, because they're so similar to it. Their energies, are so similar to that reality. They come directly from that reality. And just like how you might call everybody in a family by the same last name because they all share it, Likewise, all those angels at that level share the name of their parentage, right? And so you may have with beings, but don't think that it's, don't think that it's one of these platonic deities, right? It may even be a god. There's in Platonic theology, there's the concept of terrestrial deities, meaning that these are deities who have souls. These are deities that they're the very apex of soul, and the Amalekites calls them divine souls, godlike souls. They're the very apex of soul. And because they have a soul that exists within space and time, they can come in your dreams, they can grant you boons and different, blessings. And they are manifestations of those heavenly realities. They are manifestations of those divine realities, but they're not the same as those divine realities. And we want to connect to those divine realities instead of being too attached to lower manifestations of them. If you're attached to the higher realities, then the other manifestations will come. If you're attached to the other manifestations, you may never even see them. So, when we perform the Pentaspendia, as you can see, we're operating on many different levels now. Our intent has to be pure. Everything that we're using needs to be pure as well. So the water can't be something that we got, it can't be something we were drinking out of earlier, right? Don't take a sip of some water and then offer it on the, on the lingam or on the egg. And nothing can be used, right? So don't use olive oil you've been cooking with and then sit there and take it and, put it in a bowl and try to conserve that way. No, if you're that pressed for money that you can't have nice fresh ingredients, then just use water. Water is the basis. Water is the base offering. All these offerings can be done just with water. But otherwise, make sure everything is nice. If you're using milk, right, make sure that your milk is not filled with suffering and misery, right? That means make sure your milk did not come from an animal that lived a horrific life, okay? So make sure you get your milk from a good place, from cows who you have faith, were raised well and had decent lives, because that energy is going to be in their milk very palpably. And anyone who's done regular Pentaspendias and Hindu pujas with really good organic unhomogenized milk, I mean just pure raw milk, test the difference in it. I mean there's a power to it in the offering that homogenized and antibiotic filled milk just doesn't have. Okay. So because it comes from a living entity, make sure that the living entity was likewise, in a decent place. Obviously, the best is if you yourself have a cow, right? Because then you can even actually, traditionally, before you use the milk for the offerings, you would actually kind of, engage in a little bit of worship alongside the cow, right? And saying prayers and stuff to the cow, and then saying certain prayers while you get the milk out. And so even the whole process of getting the milk was very pure and ritualistic. Which again, this comes down to how much meaning can you apply to things, right? Like with any ritual, you can really have an intense level of reason and intellect tied into that ritual that increases its power immensely, right? I mean, if you went to a spring on a full moon night to get the water for the Pentaspendia, that's going to be some pretty awesome water to offer instead of just some water from the tap. Right? Because you applied intent to it. There's the intent, and there's that emphasis that you went out of your way, you took time, you made effort to go get this water. And that's what the gods are going to receive in the offering, is that intent, that effort that you made. You can do this all the way down to making your own copper bowls. Right? You can go to the Nomad River yourself and fish out your own Orphic egg, right? I mean, you can really, and ritual magicians used to take this stuff very seriously. I mean, they really used to. I mean, ritual magicians in many cultures, traditionally, they forged their own daggers They forge their own bells. They forge their own chalices. They make their own drums. They kill the animal that the hide of the drum came from. They sacrifice it ritually. They skin it ritually. They tan it ritually. They make the drum ritually. I mean, you can, a really good shaman or a really good kind of old world magician, they were involved in every single part of their ritual, including every item that they used. And that's why they got some incredible results. And that's why you don't see a lot of those results nowadays amongst practitioners.
Yes, can goat milk be used?
Goat milk can be used because there's the same concept of milk. I mean, it's still that, you know, the mother's breast. But cows are generally seen to have an association of motherhood with them more than goats. And I think it's actually more in their nature. Like the personality of like a happy cow is somewhat motherly. Like they're very kind of, you know, goats are very playful and they run around and headbutt you and stuff, you know. Cows are like really, they like to just come and like put their head on top of your shoulder and, you know, like be pet well. And they like to like lay down with you and have you kind of cuddle up with them. And they just have like this very motherly energy about them. So yeah, so cows have a little bit more of that symbolism. So the more involved you can get in your ritual, and you don't have to take that to crazy ends, but every now and then it's nice to. If you can press your own olive oil, go for it, right? If you can, you know, you would go to a sacred spring on a full moon night when the moon's exalted in Taurus, and get yourself some water, just a few gallons of water to use in ritual worship, go for it, right? The more meaning you can apply to something, the better. Because like I said, that's really what those higher realities respond to, is where was your intent? Where was your emphasis? That's part of the reason why traditionally before you did big invocations or before you did evocations of angels and the things in the old magical traditions, you would fast and engage in ritual purity and be in solitude for at least 3 days before you did the ritual act, right? And the reason why wasn't because, you know, in terms of just the physics of energy, it made that big of a difference. No, it was because the physics of your intent made that big of a difference. The fact that you fasted for 3 days and took ritual baths 3 times a day and stayed in constant ritual purity and avoided contact with anything impure for 3 days just to be able to try to speak with this angel or just to be able to do an invocation of this energy. That carries a lot of power to it, carries a lot of weight to it, right? There's a great statement. It was made. Tapaswaji Maharaj, who was a great yogi in the 1900s, says that he actually heard a great yogi say this, and actually this comes from the Mahabharata. There's a book in the Mahabharata where this is said explicitly to one of the kings, one of the old Indian kings, and he says, I forget what leads up to the conversation, but he says, well, you know, don't you understand that the yogis perform their austerities for the sake of heavenly fame? And this is an interesting concept, right? And it's in the Mahabharata that, you know, these guys doing egg padatap, like standing on 1 foot for a year or 2 at a time, you know, and things like this. They're doing these things not because energetically there's something amazing happening that we just don't know about and they have some kind of secret technique. No, they're doing something really simple and uncomfortable for a long period of time, but with totally controlled intent. That they are suffering through this because they love God so much, they're hoping God will notice their love. If they do something really difficult, right? Just like, you know, how if you really go out of your way for somebody and they know you really went out of your way, then they can feel that intent. It's more meaningful to them. So yeah, so the more you can go out of your way for your rituals, the better. But don't sit here and hold off doing Pentaspendias for 5 years until you've made everything. It's like, no, you know, be practical, right? But any little thing you can do here and there to add more meaning to what you're doing is, you know, all the better. So we're going to take a little break now, and I'm going to get things set up for the Pentaspendia to illustrate and show. So we'll take probably a 10 or 15-minute break, however long it takes us to get all the offerings ready, and then we'll start again. So this feed is going to stay live. I'm just going to turn off the audio and the video, and we'll be back with you shortly once we have everything set up. Okay, guys, so you're gonna have to bear with us here while we try to. I've never actually demonstrated a ritual live, so we'll have to see kind of how to angle things here. Everybody can see everything the best we can. I might have to move the camera around a little bit here and there.
Further
So,
away?
Hmm?
You want it further away?
well, then you'd be able to hear me though. This is connected to that. Yeah. So they have to hear me through the camera here. Okay. So just give us a second here to figure out how to set this all up.
There you go.
Okay, you want to turn that on? Is it on? Yeah. Because we can just edit it, you know?
Oh, wait, it is on. Did you start on?
I know it's on, but it's not recorded.
It's not
That's on
recording.
standby.
Yeah.
So you have to hit the red button.
What red button?
Hold on.
Is it the one
Right
with the
side.
triangle? Is it the play button?
No.
That's the red button. This one,
Yeah.
told you. Also, I just got through the camera.
Editing.
Okay, can everybody see me and hear me okay?
I can.
You can. I will be doing phone Pentaspendia. I'm going to try to do, you know, for today, the exact rituals on the PDF that I gave you, which are simplified rituals that I wrote just for this workshop, right? So a lot of these are actually based, though, especially the fire ritual, which is why Talea-san was saying, oh, I gave you guys, you know, some good stuff. Because the fire ritual especially is based off of 2 different fire rituals in the inner school. You know, I kind of took a little bit from both of those. So, so these are good rituals. I'm trying to do exactly what I have here for you. And I'm going to actually read through it too and make sure I can comment on anything. And then afterwards, when I finish the ritual, then we'll do kind of a quick Q&A about it. Okay. Obviously, expect today to run behind schedule because we're just now starting this, and our lunch break was supposed to be starting now. So I will not skip lunch. Okay, so yes, it would also be good if you can to also have your Pentaspendia thing open. So I'm just going to show you. I'm going to grab the camera here and show you a few things. So whoop. All right, everything's backwards here. That's a Pablo and a Charlotte. You can't see it now. So this is the basic ritual setup that I have here. Everything's backwards and reversed like this. Okay. This is the basic setup that I have. So you see I have the milk. I have 5 containers. The 5th one is actually one of these big ones with water. And then I have my milk. I have rose water. I have olive oil. I have honey water. This is something that I'd recommend you guys get something like this. So let me show you this for a minute. This is, you can get these at a lot of Christian stores actually, and Catholic like merchandise stores. You can get them on Amazon. But this is for consecrating, right? So this is blessed water that you put in here. And there's a sponge in here that soaks up the water when you dip it in, right? When you take it out, it's got little holes in it, which you might be able to see there. And so when you kind of swing it, water comes out of it, right? And that's what we use to bless things with. Okay.
What would it call?
I don't know what they call this. And then I have my my bullhorn here. And white bullhorn is really good symbolism, but it doesn't really matter, you know, so much which color it is. My bell. And then here we have the Orphic egg set up. You see I have a nice big basin here for the Orphic egg. Right? Have the school seal set up there. Get a little closer so you can hear me better. All right, there we go. The school seal set up here. I have a flame here. I like these. These are very easy to offer with. Right. I have some tea for myself, the belly offerings, and then the incense going. Okay. So, the first thing that generally that we want to do, we want to make sure everything that the water has been blessed and consecrated. Okay. We want to make sure that also we have something. I'm using white paper towels because I don't have a white cloth reserved for the occasion, but something white that hasn't been used, before, is what we're going to use to clean, to dry off the orphigeg afterwards. I don't know if I've actually put the horn in the instructions or not. It's not necessary, but the spirits, this is a way of calling everything to the ritual, right? And pretty much every ritual in the inner school begins with blowing the horn. And this is especially offerings. Offerings normally begin with some kind of loud declaration, right? Some kind of, doing something to really invite the spirits to come, invite the angels to come, so that their energy descends into the area. Right? Normally, what we'll do is we'll blow the horn. You can use a conch shell too, and ring the bell at the same time. Right? The horn is actually kind of an active masculine thing, and the bell is more feminine. Right? Masculine objects are generally held by the right hand and go on the right side. Feminine ones in the left hand and on the left side. The bell is feminine, so you have to learn how to ring the bell well with your left hand. Right? The horn, because the horn is only on the masculine animals, has a masculine energy to it. Right? So we sound the horn and we ring the bell, right, like this. Not like that. Better than that. And we do this 3 times, control. And we blow it with the intent of kind of calling everything, getting everything's attention for the ceremony. I'm just going to check, make sure you guys are hearing me okay. So, the preparations for the ritual, right? The theurgist should arrange an altar in the eastern or northern direction with a raised platform in the center of the altar. This is describing kind of the ideal, setup here. To the left of the platform should be placed the offering materials, which we have over here to the left, right? To the right normally is where you put the incense, the flame, the seal. Also, if you're using a wand or a dagger in the ritual, which I didn't write this for, but if you were in a ritual, you would have it on the right side. And if you have one, like you guys in level 1 and 2 who have been consecrating your dagger, let it be present during your rituals because it will benefit from the energy. Okay, so put it on, and that would go on the right side. And again, also with magical weapons, feminine ones go on the left of the center, and masculine ones go on the right of the center. To the left of the platform should we place the offering materials, the 5 liquids in their respective vessels. The first liquid is water that has been blessed by chanting Yahweh with the hands raised over it. The second is olive oil. The third is water mixed with honey. The fourth is water scented by roses, fragrant oils, or some other fragrance. And the fifth is wine. To the right of the raised platform should be the school of the seal, or the seal of the school, with the incense and flame in front of it. In the center of the altar on the raised platform should be placed the orphigeg, or the statue of the deity placed inside of a large basin to collect the offerings that pour off the statue. The incense and flame should be lit before commencing with the ceremony. You'll have 3 vessels of water, but you can do it in 2, and I have 2 today for this. But the point is that you're using water 3 different times, right? You have water that you're using for the general purification, which is what I have here. You have water that you're using for the offering, and then you have water that you're using for cleaning it afterwards, right? And I recommend that you begin and end with water. Like water is the basis of life, like I was saying. Right? So even though the last offering is wine, and I mentioned that the last offering should be wine, because it represents consciousness, it represents ecstasy. So it has a high energy with it. Even though that's the last offering, the last liquid to touch it is water, because when it's all done, you wash it with water. So the first step of the Pentaspendia that I have here is chanting Yahweh to stabilize the mind and purify the energies. And then placing the right fingers into the holy water. Sprinkle the water on yourself, your surrounding area, and the offerings while continuing to chant Yahweh. This chant is retained throughout the whole ceremony. Now, if you have something like this, you'll use this instead of putting your fingers into it. I recommend having something like this because it keeps the water pure instead of mixing your oils and skin with the water that you're using to purify. And when we chant, again, we're chanting Yao here. So, as we're chanting, and this is if you haven't lit the incense and flame, that's a good time to do it while you're doing that chant, and you purify everything with water. Okay, which means that you purify the thing you're going to be making the offerings with. Right? You purify the offerings themselves. You purify where you're sitting. Purify yourself, and you purify the area that the offerings are happening in. Right? And also, if there's any people attending the ceremony, you sprinkle them with some water as well. You purify everything that's involved for the practice. And then we make the offerings to the masters, right? And this is one of the reasons we have the school seal here. And so we offer the fire and we offer the incense to the seal while we're chanting the Makar Hostis. Makar Hostis Yudaimon Teletasteon Edos Vyotannagesuekai Veasuetai Sukan Makar Hostis Yudaimon Teletasteon Edos Vyotannagesuekai Veasuetai Sukan Makar Hostis Yudaimon Teletasteon Edos Vyotannagesuekai Veasuetai Sukan. So I like to offer it also after it's been offered to the seal. I like to also offer it to the egg. And you can visualize many different masters. You can visualize anyone who's affected you on your spiritual path. You can visualize, try to visualize Plato and some of the old masters. You can also think of your teachers. And make sure that use the right hand. Okay, so when you're offering something, offering is a masculine activity. So we're using the right hand, right, to hold the flame and to hold the incense. And you can hold them both at the same time and offer them. With the right hand, take each of the 5 offerings one at a time and offer them over the Orphic egg or the image of the deity while ringing the bell with the left hand. Pour the offering slowly and methodically with full concentration on the object of worship, continually chanting Yahweh as you do so. It makes no particular difference which order the offerings are made, and so long as the wine is offered last. And like I said, I kind of like to begin and end with water, and I think that water should generally be the first one that you do. Wine is the last offering, but then after the wine, you again clean it. So we'll all chant Yahweh and make the offerings. So, oh, I was running out of memory.
Memory school.
Okay, so go ahead and close it. So after you've made the offerings, you saw that I washed it, right? I washed it. I started washing it, pouring with the other hand, just because my arm was tired. But you pour with the left, and you wash with the right hand after the offerings to make sure that the stone is nice and clean afterwards. Okay, all the oil is off of it, all the honey is off of it, the wine is off of it. And then you take a white rag and you clean it, all while you're still chanting, retaining a reverent state of mind. And then you continue to chant Yao, and while you chant Yao, you offer the incense and fire to it. Right? And what you'll do when you make the offering is you chant, because ideally, once you begin making the offerings, you would chant Yao throughout the rest of it. Right? You wouldn't take breaks like this. I'm just stopping to explain. So you'd continually, while still chanting Yao, you've made the 5 offerings, right? And you wash it with water while you're chanting. You dried it off while you were chanting. And then while you're chanting Yao, you would make circular motions like this with the fire towards the image. Right? And the idea here is really that the offering is being made to the beings that are the most like fire, which are the angels. Right? They're the ones who are receiving this, but it's also respecting the energies that have now accumulated inside the orphigig as a result of the ritual. And then again with the incense, making the offerings, and you'll be ringing the bell as you're chanting Yao during this. And then, like with most of our rituals, you'll close with the Makar Hostes. Makar Hostes Yudaimon, Teletasteoneros, Myotannagestuwe Kai, Deasuwe Type Sukan. And this would conclude the Pentaspendia ritual proper. Right now, at this point, usually you'll take the orphigig. If there's going to be additional offerings, then I wrote in the PDF that there's a point in here after the 5 liquid offerings, after you wash it with water, and after you dried it off, there are additional offerings that you can do, offering incense, offering flowers, tying a cloth around it, and dressing it up. There are some additional offerings that I wrote there that aren't included because they're not part of the actual Pentaspendia, right? These are additional offerings that kind of go above and beyond the Pentaspendia. And those are quite simple and quite free. You can offer as many extra things as you want, but generally we offer something for each of the senses, so that the energies that we've now established inside of it can kind of gain a psychic kind of energy, like a soul, right? And begin to have like a sense faculty. And this helps give an intelligence, even to the energy of the image that you're working with as well. Right? So this is called animating it. And that's fairly simple. Really, you offer some, with that same circular motion that I was making with the fire, you would continue, you would offer food, for the sense of taste, and you're offering the bell and singing for the sense, for the sense of sound. You would offer the cloth for the sense of touch. You would offer flowers for the sense of sight, right? And this way, and you just adorn these with it, right? And you kind of get a little bit artistic with it. I like to wrap it up really nice so it looks like the egg's wearing a hamadryan. And then I like to put the flowers inside of it and put some flowers on top of it, put some flowers around it, slide a few flowers into the cloth while I'm making the offerings for the cloth. Right? And this is very simple basis. You can chant the hecatonemi during all of this. If there's a particular deity you're trying to work with, you can visualize the deity inside the stone and chant their mantra during the entire thing instead of chanting Yao. I've just tried to give you a very basic, simple form of it. So I'll open it up now to any questions that you guys have about this part of the ritual.
I can read the questions too.
Yeah, sure. That'd be good.
Maybe there's like a 15 or 20-second delay.
Yeah, there always is. And also at this point, if you would like to, one of the things that's very traditional is to take some of what's the residual from the offerings and drink some of it, right? And this is like prasadam. This is like, you know, blessed sustenance that's been offered. It's been blessed and consecrated. So you can take a little bit in a cup and take a few swigs of it. And usually it doesn't taste too bad, you know, it depends. Sometimes it's pretty rough. It depends how much olive oil was used. We use a lot of olive oil, so it's probably gonna be a little bit of a rough mixture, but it's really never that bad. Sometimes it's actually quite sweet.
Norbert asks, do the spirits actually hear the horn or the bell, or just feel the energy of the sounds maybe?
I mean, they hear it. I mean, some of these spirits are quite corporeal. I mean, some of these spirits have what to them is a dense physical body. They just were a little denser than them, right? But they show up in pictures, and they show. I mean, I have pictures of spirits, you know, on my phone even. I mean, they show up, you know, and they have a definite tangible energy. So the spirits that are denser, like nature spirits physically hear the bell and the horn, and they physically smell it. I mean, I'm sure they don't hear it and smell it the exact same way we do, but they definitely hear it. Whereas things like the angels, I mean, it's like a reverberation to them. You know, they hear it in a different way, very different way. They hear the intent.
Nikolai asks, the longer hecatonamide chants, is it okay to chant during the offering process and stretch out the process, or still better to do before or at the end of the offering process?
Say that again. I didn't quite understand
Is it okay? So is it okay to chant the hecatonamide 100 times to kind of stretch out the actual pouring of the offerings, or should you chant the hecatonamide?
No, you don't need to chant it 100 times, or else the thing is, it's going to be so slow, you're going to lose the momentum of the energy. You're going to be sitting there for 2 hours doing a Pentaspendia. The Pentaspendia is really only supposed to be a 10-15 minute thing. I mean, you're going to have a hard time keeping the energy really climaxed during the ritual. You're going to start boring the nature spirits. You know? I mean, you can start boring yourself maybe even. I mean, it's hard to keep the energy going. And so do it 12 times. If you're going to do the hecatonamide during the Pentaspendia, do it 12 times like this, okay? Offer 2 rounds of hecatonamide for each of the 5 offerings. Offer a round of hecatonamide for the water at the end to clean it, and offer a round of hecatonamide while you're wiping it off with the cloth. And then that'll be 12 rounds of hecatonamide during the Pentaspendia.
Frank Lou asks, before offering the food and cloth, we should move the egg to the altar while chanting Iao, right?
Yeah, you should. I mean, if the egg is always on your altar, then it doesn't really have to be a big deal to just pick it up and put a basin under it, right? But again, you can add as much meaning to something as you want. Now, if the egg is someplace else, then yes, normally you'll chant Iao or you'll chant the hecatonamide while you grab it and move it. And it has to be moved respectfully, and normally it should be wrapped up in something when it's moved.
Daryl Crute asks, if you have a chalice, which liquid is best offered in it?
The wine. If you have a chalice, offer the wine in the chalice. And then drink drink the residue afterwards. Like take a scoop of it, pour it into the chalice, and drink it from the chalice. Because that shows reverence towards it.
Frank Lou asks, what is the intent we should have in mind while we are offering?
Just that you're giving your love and adoration to God, and this is how you're expressing it, right? And I mean, you can have even different intents for each. Like I was talking earlier about some of the symbolism of each of the liquids, right? And so you can have that intent while you offer each of the liquid. You can be thinking about offering the water as a symbol of life. I offer my life to you, right? and offering the, you know, the milk is like I offer, like, you alone are my mother and father, you alone are my sustenance, you alone are what supports me, right? And offering the oil, thinking like I offer you my spirit, my energy, my life force itself, and offering the water and you know, like associating really life with that, and offering the fragrant water as like a special gift, you know, like I love you and please accept the special gift, and offering the honey water as the nectar of the god, you know, and asking that, you know, as you're offering your nectar and hopes that they offer their nectar, you know. So and the wine is consciousness, ecstasy.
Keith Berry asks, can a whistle be used for calling the spirits instead of a horn?
No, spirits don't like whistles. Whistles actually break the energy of the air. Whistles break the energy, and so they really whistling will chase away spirits. Like if someone's possessed and you start whistling really intensely, it'll drive them insane, because it's like nails on a chalkboard to a spirit.
What about the Hindus do for pujas, a conch shell?
Yeah, conch shell's fine. Yeah. Yeah, conch shell is completely fine, and because conch shell has that kind of nice, you know, what's the Fibonacci sequence or whatever on it. It has like a special spiral that represents the way that the universe unfolds, right? So to blow the conch shell is like the Hindus say it's like chanting Om, right? Like it's nature's Om is the conch shell. So that's fine if you use a conch, you know. In our tradition, we use the bullhorn. Why do we use that? Who knows? Because it's Dionysos, but what's one of Dionysos' names?
Tautopon?
Tautopon, Tautopagos, the bull, right? Bullhorn, bull face, right? And traditionally in the old ceremonies, even, you drank the wine out of a pitcher, and the handles of the pitcher were the horns of a bull, and the pitcher itself was shaped like the skull of a bull. And that's what you drink it out of in the old rituals, right? Because that was Dionysos, that was a form of Dionysos. It comes from the concept of the Cretan bull and the association of the bull with Sirius. And an old name in Minoan culture for Sirius is Ikaios, which is one of the names of Dionysos. So there's a lot of powerful symbolism between the bull and Dionysos.
And James has 3 questions.
Whoa, James. 3 questions?
In a row. Does a lingam become tied or belong to a particular deity when you use it for Pentaspendia towards it? Or can it be used for worship of any other deities with no issues?
Well, the whole thing about the egg is that it's a formless form, right? So yeah, because of that, it gains a kind of homogeneity. I mean, you can move back and forth between different deities using the same stone. Now, if it was in the image of a deity, you couldn't do that, right? I mean, if I had Io Dionysos written on this in different names, if I had, you know, the 100 names of Dionysos written along in a spiral, you know, along this Orphic egg here, and I had the eye of Dionysos in the background kind of ecstatically, like if I really dressed this up in a really old school, you know, wandering Bacchae kind of way, then yeah, it's for Dionysos, and it should only be used for Dionysos. If you keep it nice and blank like this and formless, then it represents the unity of intellect and the unity of all the gods.
James, the second question is, with an oil lamp, what is the appropriate way to extinguish it after doing an offering of the flame?
So normally with an oil lamp, if you just take the wick and pull it down a little bit into the oil, it goes right out. You always snuff a sacred flame. You don't blow it out. Blowing it out is seen as like kind of a coarse, like, you know, exerting too much humanity on it, right? And in old cultures, we lose some of these things over time. In old cultures, it's seen as bad etiquette to do like what a lot of people do now when they get tired or exhausted and they go, or they get like exasperated and they just kind of like they make like a sound with their mouth. They blow out of a sense of exasperation. And it's the same blow we do if we're trying to blow out a candle, right? And it's just kind of, it's seen as like bad courtesy, like it seems like bad etiquette, right? And we don't really have that in our cultures anymore. Maybe some still do. like Arabic culture, for example, is still seen as being bad etiquette. And so, and same thing like in traditional Hindu culture, it's bad etiquette to blow out, to blow on anything like that, you know. So likewise, when you're putting out the flame, you snuff it, or you can take your hand, like if it's a flame on an incense, for example, or if it's just a normal little candle instead of oil lamp. This probably won't work on an oil lamp. You can just take your hand and just fan it, and you can fan it a few times with your hand to put the flame on. Okay. Or you can snuff it. But you don't blow right on it. That's seen as like a very aggressive way to terminate it.
And Jim's third question is, what are some ways to keep the whole ritual short and expedient? So one is more likely to do it more often.
Well, the whole process that I just did shouldn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes. So, you know, so just do what I just did. Just chant it out.
Christopher Lee asks, what do we do with the extra offerings after the ritual?
Any extra offerings after the ritual that you don't consume should be poured outside on something living, right? I mean, they should be like given to nature. And they should be given with the intent as an offering to all the local spirits, because all the local spirits are there. So any deceased souls that are there, any ghosts, any spirits, nature spirits, elementals, anything, you're offering it to them as a gift to them, so that there can be harmony between you and them, and that they can bring, good weather to the area, good crops and things like that. So you offer it with an intent, and you offer it to nature.
Nikolai asks, the residue liquid, can we use it for purification during the day instead of holy water by touching the 3 energy centers with it? Is it more powerful than holy water for that?
No, don't use it for purification. Because that's kind of like, it has a sacredness to it, and kind of like rubbing it on yourself, I mean, it's not going to purify you. If you want to if you want to keep a little bowl aside and dab your finger in it and put it on your brow point or something, or put a little bit on your thumos to help get your energy flowing and to feel connected to the divine, that's fine. There's no problem with that. But don't do illustrations with it. Like, don't, get your hands all wet and then rub it on your face, because that's kind of like derogatory. Like, that's a little bit abusive to it.
Yeah, he was referring to just using it like the holy water to the 3 treasures.
Yeah. If you want just like the holy water to the 3 treasures, that's fine. You can keep a little bowl of it aside. Well, the milk will go bad, but if there's enough oil and enough wine in there, it'll last probably a week or so before it really goes bad.
Oh, actually, somebody asked a question a while back here. Okay, Daryl asked, could you use homemade almond milk just for the symbolism if you really can't find decent real milk?
No, it can't be milk from a nut or from a coconut even. Maybe you could use coconut milk just because the coconut itself is somewhat like a womb, and it's all the milk is in one coconut, right? But that would be, for that stipend, I would require that you bought the coconut and you broke the coconut so that all the milk was in the one coconut. That way it retains the symbolism of having been one unified milk inside of a coconut. And because you can argue that to some cultures, the coconut is like a mother. I mean, like the Indian culture, for example, the coconut is a very important thing. And to some of the island cultures, the coconut is a very powerful thing. And it actually has a theology associated with it. It has myths and folklore associated with it. But if you're going to use coconut milk, you should actually get the coconut and break it so that it's all one homogeneous milk from one coconut for the sake of symbolism.
Make milk. Could there be coconut water?
Yeah, it'd be coconut water, essentially. Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Unless you're gonna make it into milk.
It's not that easy. Victor asks, is there a special way to dispose of the white paper towel used to clean the egg?
Yeah, you would throw it in the trash. No, I'm joking. Throw it in a fire, or bury it. That's why normally you wouldn't use a paper towel. I'm using a paper towel because I got a fire right here in front of me, and I'm just gonna throw it in the fire. But normally you wouldn't use a paper. You wouldn't use something disposable. You would use a cloth and that cloth would be just for cleaning the egg, and you would clean that cloth and keep it nice and clean, bleach it so it's nice and white, right? And that would be maybe a few of those set aside, but you wouldn't throw those away.
Tim Cleary asks, does the circular waving motion of the incense and candle have to be in a clockwise motion?
Yes. Yeah, you should wave. You should make the offerings in a clockwise, right? Yeah. Clockwise sends energy out. Counterclockwise pulls energy in, right? And so from your body, you know, going from left to right is what sends out. Coming from right to left is what pulls in.
Would you ever go counterclockwise? Not with offerings, obviously, no.
In some situations, yeah, not with offerings you wouldn't go counterclockwise, but in some banishings you would go counterclockwise. The tantrikas go counterclockwise around the stupas and everything in Tibet, and they piss everybody off because everybody's going clockwise to give energy to the stupa, and then the cave yogis go down there and they go counterclockwise so they can take the energy from the stupa into themselves. And then black magic or magical warfare, like if you were going to draw a spirit into an item, which would normally have to be a hollow item like a gourd, you would while you're chanting the mantras, you would be rubbing your finger counterclockwise into it to pull them in.
Norbert asks, on behalf of Nathan, what is the origin of the Pentaspendia? How did the ancients discover that pouring liquid over an egg could be so powerful?
Well, the pouring liquid over an egg thing is that's an Orphic. Orpheus did that, but it's hard to say where on earth that began. I mean, some of the oldest cultures we've discovered, like the old Indus Valley cultures, the Haramic civilizations, things in the old Indian subcontinent that date back 4,000 or 5,000 BC, 6,000 BC, 8,000 BC. And we see, we unearth lingams. I mean, we unearth Orphic eggs and old style Shiv lingams from those places. And there's some imagery that shows that they were making offerings on these, right? And we see that as very old. Same thing with like when we dig up certain areas around old Egyptian temples, we find Orphic eggs and things. And we can see that you know, this used to be a common practice, was for people to take clay and make their own and make offerings on it, right? It's called a stihira lingam and you know, Sanskrit, and that's, you know, it's a lingam you just make yourself. You make it like clay. And so yeah, it's who knows when that began. I mean, as long as religion has been around, I mean, even Abraham did that. I mean, we have examples in the Old Testament of prophets building stone altars, taking a bunch of stones and piling them on top of each other and then pouring liquids on them. Elijah famously did it with water, said his prayers, and all the altars ignited, right? They ignited on fire. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And Abraham would build altars like that and pour offerings on them. I mean, like we see that even in the Old Testament. So who knows really how old these traditions are. So we're gonna stop there so that we don't go forever. We're gonna stop there with the Q&A. And now we're going to take lunch break, and we'll be back in around an hour. Let's see, what time is it now? It's 1:41. We'll try to get started around 2:30 or so. We'll see. It kind of depends how well we can get things set up. And I will post the video link for that as well, and we'll try to get that going. So, thank you all. God bless. Be victorious, and I will see you all in about an hour.